Your mind isn't broken, it's just been given the wrong job description. And the moment you understand what that job actually is, the overthinking stops feeling like a curse and starts making complete sense. If you've ever laid awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from 3 years ago, or spent an entire morning worrying about a problem that hasn't happened yet, this video is going to reframe everything you think you know about your own mind. By the end, you'll understand exactly why your brain does this, what ancient thinkers figured out thousands of years ago, that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to, and one specific redirection technique you can use the next time your thoughts spiral. Let's get into it. Picture a golden retriever that's been locked inside all day, no walk, no fetch, nothing to do. What happens? It chews the furniture. Not because it's a bad dog, because it's a high energy animal with nowhere to put that energy. Your mind works the same way. When it has no clear anchor, no specific task to focus on, it doesn't go quiet. It goes to work on whatever's available. And what's always available? Your fears, your regrets, the argument you had, the email you haven't sent, the version of tomorrow that hasn't happened yet. Neuroscientists have a name for this. They call it the default mode network, or DMN. It's a set of brain regions that activate specifically when you're not focused on a task. Think of it as your brain's screensaver, except instead of a peaceful image, your screensaver is a highlight reel of everything you're anxious about. Research from Harvard found that people spend nearly 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're actually doing. And here's the part that matters. That mind wandering was consistently linked to lower happiness scores, not sometimes, consistently. So the problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is that your mind is doing exactly what it was built to do when it has nothing better to hold on to. It's scanning for threats, replaying the past to extract lessons, and simulating futures to prepare for them. That's not a malfunction. That's the factory setting. The question is, what do you do about it? Takeaway: the next time you catch yourself overthinking, don't fight it. Just notice it and say to yourself, my mind is doing its job, now I'm going to give it a better one. About 5,000 years ago, a text called the Bhagavad Gita described the human mind in a way that sounds almost clinical by today's standards. It said essentially that the uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy a person can have, but the same mind, when trained, becomes your closest ally. Now, before you tune out thinking this is going to get religious, stay with me. Because what this text was describing wasn't sin or spiritual failure. It was a psychological mechanism that every human being deals with, regardless of what they believe. Here's the specific insight. The mind, according to this framework, functions like a sixth sense. Your five physical senses take in data from the world. Your mind processes that data and then does something interesting. It generates craving toward what felt good and aversion toward what felt bad. Over and over. That cycle is the engine of overthinking. Think about the last time you couldn't stop thinking about something. Wasn't it almost always attached to either something you wanted and were afraid of losing, or something you were afraid of and trying to avoid? That's the craving aversion loop running at full speed. Modern psychology calls aversion of this cognitive fusion, the state where you get so tangled up in your thoughts that you can't separate yourself from them. The thought becomes reality. The worry becomes the thing itself. What the ancient framework adds to this is a specific claim. The mind doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be redirected, given a higher object of focus, something that doesn't trigger the craving aversion cycle, something stable. That's not mysticism, that's engineering. Takeaway: notice which of your overthinking loops are driven by craving, wanting something versus aversion, avoiding something. That single distinction gives you a map of where your mind is stuck. Here's the worst advice anyone ever gave about overthinking: just stop thinking about it. In 1987, a psychologist named Daniel Wegner ran a simple experiment. He told participants to think about anything they wanted, but not to think about a white bear. Then he counted how often the white bear showed up in their thoughts. The result? Trying not to think about something makes you think about it more. He called it the ironic process theory. The act of suppression requires your brain to monitor for the forbidden thought, which means constantly activating it. Every meditation teacher, every therapist trained in acceptance and commitment therapy, and every ancient wisdom tradition that survived thousands of years agrees on this. You cannot fight your way to a quiet mind. Resistance amplifies Redirection works. So, what does redirection actually look like in practice? There are three anchors that work consistently, and they all share one thing in common. They give your mind something real, present, and specific to hold on to. The first is breath, not deep breathing as a relaxation trick, but breath as a genuine object of sustained attention. When you focus on the physical sensation of air entering and leaving your body, you are giving your default mode network a task. The rumination loop needs idle processing power to run. Focus breath attention pulls that power away. The second is sound repetition. This is what Mahan true practice actually is, stripped of all the ceremony. You pick a word or short phrase, you repeat it silently, and you return to it every time your mind wanders. The science behind this is solid. Repetitive auditory focus activates the parasympathetic nervous system and reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. You're not chanting magic words, you're giving your mind a rhythm to follow instead of a spiral to descend. The third is deliberate visualization, not daydreaming, which feeds the default mode network, but intentional, structured mental imagery with a specific focus. Athletes use this. Surgeons use this. Ancient practitioners used this for thousands of years before anyone called it a technique. All three work by the same mechanism. They give the mind a job that isn't rumination. Takeaway: pick one anchor today, breath, sound, or a mental image, and commit to returning to it for 5 minutes when you notice your thoughts spiraling. Don't try to stop the thoughts, just keep returning. There's a specific moment that people describe when they first experience what happens after the overthinking loop breaks. They don't usually describe it as peace, they describe it as space, like a room that had been full of noise suddenly going quiet and realizing the room was actually quite large. Therapists who work with cognitive diffusion, the practice of separating yourself from your thoughts rather than believing every one of them, describe a similar phenomenon. When you stop treating every thought as a fact that requires a response, the mental landscape changes. Thoughts still arise, but they pass through rather than taking up residence. This is what the ancient texts were pointing at when they described a trained mind as an ally, not a mind with no thoughts, a mind where you are the one deciding which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones you let go. Here's a practical way to understand this. Imagine you're sitting next to a busy road. Cars go by constantly. You can't stop the cars, but there's a difference between sitting there watching traffic and standing in the middle of the road trying to redirect every vehicle. One is exhausting and dangerous, the other is actually quite peaceful once you stop fighting it. Your thoughts are the cars. You are the person sitting beside the road. The problem isn't the traffic. The problem is that nobody told you that you don't have to stand in it. Cognitive diffusion, which is the clinical term for this, has strong research support for reducing anxiety, depression, and rumination. But the mechanism it's describing, watching thoughts without becoming them, is something that contemplative traditions have been teaching for millennia. The language is different. The practice is nearly identical. The spaciousness you're looking for isn't something you create. It's something you uncover by stepping out of the loop long enough to notice it was always there. Takeaway: when a thought grabs you today, try saying internally, I'm noticing the thought that, before the content of the thought. That 1 second gap is the beginning of spaciousness. Here's the honest part that most videos on how to stop overthinking skip over. One insight doesn't rewire a brain. Awareness is the starting point, not the finish line. The default mode network is a deeply grooved pattern. Years, sometimes decades, of unchecked mental wandering have made certain thought loops feel like home. You don't break that with one good meditation session. You break it the same way any habit breaks, through consistent, deliberate repetition of the replacement behavior. Neuroscientists call this Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you catch yourself in the loop and redirect, you are literally building a new neural pathway. Not metaphorically, physically. The brain changes in response to repeated practice. This is documented, it's called neuroplasticity, and it's one of the most well-supported findings in modern neuroscience. So what does a sustainable practice actually look like? It doesn't have to be elaborate. The most effective approach for most people has 3 components. First, a daily anchor practice, 5 to 10 minutes, same time every day. where you deliberately practice one of the redirection techniques we covered. Morning works best for most people because you set the tone before the day's demands activate the default mode network. Second, a trigger response plan. Identify the specific situations that reliably send you into overthinking. Lying in bed, long commutes, waiting rooms. For each trigger, decide in advance which anchor you'll use. This removes the decision from the moment of stress, when your prefrontal cortex is least available to help you. Third, and this is the one people skip most often, self compassion when you fail. You will get lost in the loop again. That is not failure. That is the nature of the mind. The ancient texts are clear on this. The goal is not a mind that never wanders. The goal is a mind that knows how to come back. Every return is a repetition. Every repetition builds the pathway. Every pathway makes the next return a little easier. The people who figure out how to stop overthinking aren't the ones who found a trick that silenced their minds forever. They're the ones who got very good at noticing, redirecting, and returning over and over until the loop lost its grip. That's the whole practice. Notice, redirect, return. Take away. Set one 5-minute anchor practice for tomorrow morning before you check your phone. That single habit, done consistently, is where the long-term change actually begins. If something in this video landed for you, the best thing you can do right now is subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We go deep on this kind of material every week, ancient wisdom translated into practical tools you can actually use. And if you have any questions about what we covered today, whether it's about the redirection techniques, the default mode network, or how to build the anchor practice in a way that fits your life, drop them in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. Seriously, ask anything. Finally, the link in the description takes you to the free Daily Mind Reset Kit. It's a simple set of resources that builds on everything we talked about today. A 5-day practice guide, a trigger response worksheet, and a short audio anchor you can use right now. It's free. Go grab it. And I'll see you in the next one.